Title: I sold my condo and saved our family hotel from bankruptcy. But at the staff meeting, my parents announced my brother as CEO. Claire: He's more of a leader, my mom said, and Ryan smirked. I didn't fight back, but I made the sale that saved them. The ink had barely dried on the closing documents when I walked out of the attorney's office, keys to my condo clutched in one hand, a check for $340,000 in the other. It was everything I had, my savings, my emergency fund, the home I worked 10 years to earn, gone, all to save the family hotel. We'd run that place since I was a teenager. I managed front desk operations, rewrote marketing copy, cleaned rooms when short-staffed, and negotiated with vendors when my father couldn't deal with it. When COVID hit, we bled. When inflation surged, we suffocated. And when my mother said, we just need one big push to stay afloat, I gave up my home to buy them time. They promised I'd have an executive title, that I'd finally have a say. I didn't ask for control. I just wanted acknowledgement, respect. Instead, I got a front row seat to my own dismissal. At the quarterly staff meeting, everyone was there. The longtime receptionist who'd watched me grow up, the finance manager who asked me questions instead of my father, housekeepers, bellhops, vendors, and front desk agents all waiting to hear the new direction. And that's when my mom stood up. We're proud to announce that Ryan will be stepping in as CEO. Gasps. Applause. I froze. Ryan, my younger brother, barely worked 1 full year at the hotel. He had no management experience. He'd only returned last summer after burning out from 2 failed startups. He didn't invest $1, but he wore a suit, and apparently that was enough. My mom continued, smiling like she was handing him a birthday gift. Claire will, of course, continue to assist with day-to-day operations. But Ryan has the vision. He's more of a leader. My chest tightened. Then Ryan smirked, the kind of smug, punchable grin that said, "You didn't really think this was yours, did you?" I didn't speak. I didn't storm out. I sat through the rest of the meeting, nodding when appropriate, even complimenting Ryan's vision statement, because I didn't need to fight back in that room. I just needed to remember everything. Every lie, every thankless hour, every dollar they didn't have until I handed it to them. And right then, while Ryan beamed and my parents clapped, I made a decision. I wouldn't fight for my place. I'd make a plan, a quiet one, a permanent one. And by the time they realized what I'd done, it would be far too late. The ledger they forgot. The next morning, Ryan moved into the corner office. He brought in new furniture, a sleek espresso machine, a crystal paperweight shaped like a lion. I watched from the hallway, coffee in hand, as he directed maintenance staff like a movie director on his first big set. "Make sure my name's on the door by Monday," he said. "No offense, Claire." I smiled. None taken. Because I wasn't going to argue about whose name was on the door. I was more interested in whose name was still on the deed. You see, I didn't just dump my condo money into the business like some naive donor. I'd made them sign a promissory note, a formal document acknowledging that I'd loaned the hotel $275,000 with a clause for default conversion to equity. It had been presented as a routine part of the refinancing process. They didn't read it carefully. They were too busy celebrating the cash. I still had the original document in a safe deposit box downtown. Signed, notarized, filed. And by next quarter, I'd be converting that paper into something they couldn't erase from a staff meeting. But I didn't stop there. I met quietly with the property manager who handled vendor contracts. "Would you mind sharing the past year's expense reports?" He handed them over without question. I'd been managing invoices longer than Ryan had been managing his Wi-Fi passwords. I went home and spread them across my dining room table. And then I started building a spreadsheet. Line by line, repairs. I arranged discounts. I negotiated utility accounts I'd covered, revenue projections I'd written. The difference was obvious. Before Claire, 7% net growth. After Claire, 31% increase in quarterly revenue. But sure, Ryan had vision. I wasn't angry. I was focused. Because the best part about being underestimated is that they never notice when you're walking away, with the foundation beneath them. Signatures and silhouettes. Ryan was busy planning his first executive roundtable. Translation, catered lunch, printed agendas, and buzzwords like synergy and brand refresh. Meanwhile, I was in the county records office. The hotel, like many older family-owned businesses, had a complicated paper trail. But there it was, clear as day. Morgan Heights Hotel, LLC majority shareholder, vacant convertible debt investor, Claire Morgan collateral tied to, primary business asset. In layman's terms, if they defaulted on the promissory note, and they would, because no one had paid me a cent, I could claim a majority stake in the property. And if they fought it, I had receipts, contracts, a paper trail longer than Ryan's LinkedIn endorsements. That evening, I went back to the office after hours. I printed 3 copies of the loan default notice, stamped the date, and placed one in each of their mail slots. When Ryan walked in the next morning, he looked confused, holding the paper like it was written in a foreign language. "Claire, what is this?" I sipped my coffee. "Legal documentation. Just a heads up. You missed the 90-day repayment window." He scoffed. "Come on, you're not serious." "I'm not emotional. I'm serious." He laughed it off and walked out. But my mom didn't. She called me into her office an hour later. "Claire, we're family. We were going to pay you back. Things are just tight right now." I nodded. "Totally understand. That's why I filed the ownership reassignment this morning. It's not personal." She blinked. "You wouldn't do that." "You already did, when you picked Ryan." By Friday, I received confirmation. The hotel was now legally co-owned. 51% Claire, 49% Morgan Heights, LLC. My first executive decision? Freeze all spending over $1,000. Require dual sign-off on financial approvals. Remove Ryan's temporary salary increase. He found out when his direct deposit came, in $2,800 short. "What the hell is this?" "Alignment," I said. "Didn't you want synergy?" The fall of the prince. The next few days were tense. Ryan couldn't ignore the strange shift in the air at the hotel. He'd always been the golden child, the one with all the charisma, but none of the drive. And now, after a quick slip into the CEO's seat, he realized something. His charm wasn't going to get him out of this one. The staff noticed the changes right away. The old guard, the loyal employees who'd worked for the Morgans long before Ryan tried to make his vision a reality, began showing more respect for me. The payroll department, the head chef, even the event planners were starting to slip into my office for meetings. There was an undercurrent of anticipation, as if they knew something Ryan hadn't quite figured out. The tides were shifting, and I was at the helm. That Friday, during the weekly staff meeting, Ryan tried to assert control. He leaned over the conference table, shoulders back, but I could see the crack in his confidence. "The hotel is going in a new direction," he announced, trying to sound authoritative. "I have big plans, starting with some new initiatives." I interrupted him mid-sentence. "We have an agenda to follow, Ryan. Let's stick to it." I motioned to the staff members around the table. You all know the drill. There was an uncomfortable silence. The weight of the moment was palpable. Ryan could feel the shift, but he didn't have the right tools to fight back. He didn't have respect. He only had a title. And titles don't mean much when the employees know exactly who's making the decisions behind the scenes. He slammed his notebook shut and muttered under his breath. I held his gaze, unflinching, until he finally left the room. The second he was gone, I turned to my most trusted managers, people who had been around for years, who truly cared about the hotel's future. I've already called a meeting with the contractors. We're pushing forward with renovations. Get the plans on my desk by the end of the day." They nodded, relieved. As I left the conference room, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. This was my moment. The hotel was in my hands now. That weekend, the hotel underwent a transformation, at least in terms of its reputation. Guests began to notice the renewed energy, small changes, like the updated signage in the lobby, a revamped social media presence, and even minor improvements to the guest rooms were enough to create a buzz. And while my mom and Ryan tried to pretend that the tension didn't exist, they could feel it. They were still living in a world where they thought I was just the nice daughter who wouldn't ever ask for anything in return. But now, the true dynamics were coming to light. The call that changed everything. I was alone in my office, reviewing the latest financials, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number, but I answered anyway. "Is this Claire Morgan?" a deep voice asked. I hesitated for a second. "Yes. This is Daniel. I'm a lawyer with Robinson and Grant. I represent a third party interested in buying Morgan Heights Hotel. We believe we can make you an offer you can't refuse." I felt a tightness in my chest. What was this about? "I'm listening," I said, keeping my voice steady. "We're interested in negotiating a buyout. We're prepared to offer you $10 million for your stake in the hotel. We believe your family could benefit greatly from this, given the financial struggles they're currently facing." For a moment, the air in the room grew heavy. This was the moment where I could really secure my future, but I wasn't about to hand over control to strangers. "Thanks, Daniel, but I'm not interested in selling. However, I'd be happy to discuss something else, regarding the future of Morgan Heights." When I hung up, I felt a surge of power. This wasn't just about control anymore. It was about proving that I was more than just the family ATM. I was the future. Removal by majority. By Monday morning, the hotel buzzed with something new. Uncertainty. Rumors were flying about an outside offer and a change in leadership. Ryan had caught wind of it, and I could feel the desperation clinging to him like sweat. His voice was louder in meetings, his orders more erratic. "Claire's not in charge," he barked at the events manager. "I'm the CEO." The events manager looked him dead in the eye and replied, "You might be the CEO, but Claire owns the company." And there it was, spoken aloud for the first time, not just assumed, not whispered, declared. That afternoon, I called an emergency board meeting. It was short, professional, decisive. As the majority shareholder of Morgan Heights Hotel, I began, "I am initiating a motion to restructure executive leadership. Effective immediately, Ryan Morgan is removed as acting CEO." My parents were there, stunned. "Claire," my mother said, her voice brittle, "you can't just do this." "Actually," I replied, opening my file, "I can." I slid a document across the table, the default clause, notarized, followed by the legal ownership transfer that made me the 51% majority. Ryan stood up. "This is insane. You wouldn't even have a hotel if I hadn't..." I cut him off. "If I hadn't sold my home, if I hadn't covered payroll during the worst quarter, if I hadn't stepped in when everyone else gave up." I turned to the board members, most of whom had known me since I was 17, mopping lobby floors on weekends. This business was never about vision. It was about showing up, and I did. No one argued. The motion passed unanimously. That night, I walked through the hotel alone. The lobby lights were dimmed, the front desk quiet, the rooms full. And for the first time since selling my condo, I felt like I hadn't lost anything. I had traded a roof for a legacy. And now, it was finally mine. Ryan cleared out the next day. No goodbye, no speech, just a slamming door and a hissed, "Enjoy your power trip." I didn't respond, because it wasn't about power. It was about what's owed, and what happens when you underestimate the person who built the foundation you're standing on, built without permission. 6 months later, the hotel had never looked better. The lobby was redesigned with warm wood and modern steel. The guest reviews were glowing. The staff turnover? Down by 70%. Claire Morgan, majority owner, managing director, visionary. That's what the regional business magazine called me when they put me on the cover. She turned her family's failing legacy into a model of quiet leadership. I didn't give them the full story. Didn't mention the smirk. Didn't mention the meeting, because I didn't need to. The facts were enough. My parents stopped showing up to board meetings after the third quarter. They knew better. They still owned shares, but they had no control, no say. Occasionally, my mom would send a message. "We're proud of you, Claire. Truly." I'd read them, then delete them, because pride that only appears after the title change isn't pride. It's regret. Ryan. He tried launching a luxury startup experience in Miami. It lasted 4 months. His LinkedIn hasn't been updated since. Last I heard, he was still telling people he chose to step down from the hotel. I let him, because the version of me he'd rather believe in, she wouldn't have the power to destroy his career. She wouldn't have made a plan. She wouldn't have won. Let him keep her in his head, while I build something he'll never touch. Last week, I stood in the penthouse suite, the one we almost sold during bankruptcy. I poured a glass of champagne, looked out at the city skyline, and smiled, because I remembered what my mother said. "Claire, he's more of a leader." And now, he was gone. I was CEO, and the entire building had my name on the deed. I didn't fight back in that meeting. I built a new one without them. And that was always the real revenge. You are not alone, and you are so much stronger than you think. Tap that subscribe button to join Twisted Justice, where we share tales that heal, inspire, and remind you that even the deepest heartbreak can lead to the most beautiful new beginning. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that revenge isn't always about getting even. Sometimes, it's just about getting better.